Welcome, everyone, to episode 18 of Coach's Corner. Um, with me is my friend Adam Gehabe of Focal Point Cary, and I'm Mike Lamb of Focal Point Utah.
Hey, all.
We're excited to have a discussion, and hopefully, it's beneficial to you and helps you in your business and in your career. We
Absolutely.
love these topics, and this is one that's relevant to what we're both working on with clients right now. So, my question to you, Adam, is what are the what do we do to help business owners themselves? Not just the business, but the business owner.
Wow. It's a good one. A lot. Let's start with
Yeah.
the obvious. When people come to us and they want to talk about their business ventures and things that they want to do, they think that everything starts with focusing on numbers and figures and revenue and, operational mechanics and whatnot. Um, you know, I know you as well as we start with clarity on ourselves and our vision and our goals and all of those things. And so when you really focus in on getting the clarity of oneself, right? Who you are, what you stand for, what your values are, what you want to see in the business and all of those things, um, what you really clearly starts identifying early on is a lot of the things you end up working on are personal in nature, right? It is getting that client to understand themselves better because only after they understand themselves can they truly understand why they make the decisions they make, the impact and ramifications those types of decisions have in the business, and how things within the personal life reflects in the business, and more importantly, vice versa, right? The business stresses, the business pressures, things that may be going well or not so well within the business translate back into home life. So, I think the easiest thing to say is we first and foremost tackle clarity on who you are, what you want, and how those two kind of spheres of influence collide. I don't think you can get away from dealing with the personal and the professional. I've joked to you 1,000 times, and actually I made this joke to a few clients this morning, one last night too. And it was, part of what we do is called business therapy. And I know sometimes those words have like a taboo effect on people, but it's fascinating the things that we can talk through and people learn about themselves and just how they utilize that both in both of those lives. And so I think that's where it kind of starts. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. We've kind of gone through a process where we become business owners ourselves. And
You would hope, yes, but
kind
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And before this, I probably didn't have much clarity on who I was. I was, operating as Mike Lamb, vice president of this company and doing my job, and I didn't stop to think much about it because I grew with my position
yeah.
and I think a lot of people do. And since I've started here, I've stopped and thought about who I am. What are the things I need to work on myself to be good at
Mhm.
running my business?
Yep.
And that focal points really helped me realize, I've got some flaws and I've got some things I got to work on or I need to create ways to, not accentuate my flaws or my mistakes. I need
Yeah.
to, if I'm pretty bad at like procrastinating things, putting things off, and I know that now because I've done assessments and they've told me
That's
not
right.
just by anecdotal data. I've done the assessments myself that I give to my clients, and now I know, okay, I've got to do these things to make sure I'm not falling into those traps that I know I will if I allow myself to, and that's what happens with our clients. I think when we first start with them, getting that clarity, and that's like you say, that's the very first place we start is
Yep, it
the
is.
clarity of the business owner so they can see where they are, who they are, what their strengths are, and what their weaknesses are. And we try to help them get focused on what their strengths are and utilizing those to outweigh the weaknesses possibly, or
Yeah,
even to
agreed.
help with those weaknesses.
You said something that I want to kind of double down on, which was, in your own personal life, as you've had recognition around these things, you've learned to mask or hide some of those deficiencies. And I think that that's kind of one of those points that I really want to hone in on because, far too often everyone wants to exacerbate the strengths, right? They think that the only way to improve is betterment. And, you know, I think equal, if not more important, is around masking and mitigating the weaknesses, right? You can always focus on the things that you do well, the things that you love to go do. That's going to bring you joy, happiness. You're going to do, you're going to knock those things out of the park. Great, awesome. But there's two sides to every coin, and I don't think that other side should ever be ignored.
Yes.
Knowing yourself and knowing what you're not so great at gives you opportunities to either A, limit your personal exposure in that space, or B, and this is really where I wanted to kind of hammer this thing home, focus and bring people in around you that have those areas of strength.
Yes.
Think about that, right? This goes back to the whole team building viewpoint of how do you get the greatest volume of skills that are commingled and interworking as a singular unit. It's knowing everyone's strengths versus their weaknesses, right? Um, I was just having a discussion last night saying, hey, so at the end of last year, you know how everyone kind of does a assessment and a review of all their employees and they start to list out, things that they did well and things that they could improve upon, et cetera, et cetera. I started asking someone, I said, so do you also do a skills assessment? And I don't mean so that you're ranking one person versus another, but are you looking at all the skills you have available within your organization and really looking for redundancy? And people are like, well, why would we do that? I mean, they hear that word redundancy and they think negativity bad. And
Yeah.
I want to flip that narrative because, you know, if you're running a project and you're running a project with a team and you are lacking redundancy within a certain skill set, what happens? You identify a bottleneck, right? If that
Mhm.
person gets sick or that person gets pulled off to go do something else, you're up a creek, right? With
Yeah.
no paddle, right? And so,
Especially if you're one of four and a
bingo.
small
So
business.
I think looking at the negative side of one's actions and their traits and then figuring out how to mitigate that. Surround yourself with the right people. Make sure you have redundant skills within the org. All that stuff is absolutely critical. And the last point, and I speak super quick, when you do understand your own vision, your own goals, yourself, and you get that clarity, that's not a one-time action. Every 6 months, I want to stress, as the business changes, as the business evolves, you will evolve as well. And so go back in, revisit, right? Because you are not the same as you were 6 months ago. Neither is your business. So revisiting your strengths, your weaknesses, your vision, your wants, all those things, critical. That's it.
Yeah. No, you nailed it. I have a client that I coach that he's doing all has been doing all the estimates because he didn't want to hand that off to anyone because
Hmm.
he wants to be hands-on and control that.
Yep.
And we did a skills assessment, essentially a DISC assessment with his entire team, and we identified a person on his team that is very or detail oriented, that has all the skills of an estimator, that is precisely what he needed, and he's given that away to that individual because he identified that they can do it
Hmm.
through that skills assessment, and his time freed up. He freed up 50% of his time just by
Amazing, right?
handing off that, finding that he already had the guy on his team and he needed to put him in place. Yeah, he can back that individual up now, and if there's need, and it becomes a bottleneck, he can go and help.
Love
But
it.
identifying that skill set, it was amazing. We were sitting in a meeting together and he said, "Oh my goodness, he should be doing estimating." And I was like, "Yeah, I think you're right."
You already
As
knew
we're
that, right?
yeah, yeah, definitely. And, I'm like, "Yeah." And he was just
Yeah.
like, "We're gonna move on that tomorrow." And he has, and it's changed. And it was just from just doing basic skills assessments with his team members, identifying those.
Yep.
Um, I always, I do the communication breakthrough and I talk
Yep. Yep.
about the companies and the different personality types. And we show that pie chart that shows where you're at, if you're an influencer,
Yep.
And
Yep.
I'm like, your company should never have four people in the same box or in the same piece of the pie, because then you're missing out on all this other opportunity to have someone on your team. Say you're a high influence company and you're hiring a bunch of influencers. Who's keeping those people on track and
Right.
who's pushing projects through and who's making sure you're compliant? If you're all influencers, I love influencers. I have a higher eye.
No.
That's my secondary to
Yep.
personality type. But identifying that in yourself, like, hey, I'm an I love talking. I build amazing teams around
Yep.
me. People want to work with me.
Yep.
Man, I gotta have an S or a C on my team so that we can get some stuff done.
And just think about it. That's a conversation you guys never would have had unless you started to really reflect inward. And that's always something that's sometimes harder for people to go do. Especially like I said, when I bring up that taboo word, around therapy, right? Everyone's like, "Oh, I don't need this. I don't need to look at myself. I just want to look at the details and the specifics of the overall business." But without, going through that process, that task, that self-reflection, that may have never come up, right? They never would have looked at the skills piece of their own personality and their own attributes and what they were doing, and never really looked past that. And furthermore, Mike, it's not even just about what they were doing versus what they weren't doing. Now that your client was able to pass that estimation off, the real question that we all need to be asking, they need to be asking themselves is, okay, if I have 50% more time, what are the right things that I should be working on now as the owner to further drive my goals, right? Because that, in theory, you just opened up your most powerful resource around leadership, direction, and drive. That can have immense outcomes on those next future plans. So it's like close one thing off, gain some time, gain some insight, and then immediately flip back to planning. How should I leverage this newfound time, and how can we now better the overall organization, right?
Yeah, I mean, think about that. You're supposed to be a leader, but you're out doing, technician type work. You need to be focused on being that leader. That's
Yeah,
what you want to be.
yeah,
I assume most business owners start a business because they want to be a leader in their business and a leader in their industry. Um,
absolutely.
and that's where your time is most valuable. That's where you get the most out of it. I understand there's times where you have to get a job bid and you have to get things done. But it shouldn't be all the time.
Right.
You know.
It shouldn't.
Um, and if
Well,
you
so
have
no, please, I'm sorry,
if you
finish.
have 50% more time just to lead even that estimator, training and coaching and preparing him to be a leader in estimation, and then you have crew leads probably that you oversee that you need to take care of. There's all sorts of time that you can give to other individuals to make them better at their job. And if they're better
Yep,
at their job, you're better at your job, and the whole company's doing better.
yep,
And so,
yep.
as a business owner, you want to lead that way. You want to identify talent that can take those things from you. I know sometimes we all love our little pet that we've made, our little job, and
Yeah. It's ours. It's mine,
it's
right?
ours. Yeah, I don't want
Yeah.
to give that off because they're
Yep.
gonna mess it up. Yeah, they're gonna mess it up. That's just fine. We learn from mistakes.
Yeah.
Let them make mistakes.
It's great.
And then you as a leader get to be a leader and train them on how to avoid that mistake next time.
And it's not even about trying to correct or trying to say, here's what I would have done, right? But I like to lead with a set of three questions, right? So when you do pass something off and, it may not go exactly as you would have planned, it's all right, well, what were the expected outputs, right? And so you ask that person, what did you think
Yeah.
was going to happen? And then it's okay, well, what did happen? And then that last question is, what would you do differently next time? Right? I don't want to step in as that leader who might have started that project or started that process or started anything and then say, well, here's where you went wrong. That's not teaching. That's scolding. That's parenting,
Yeah.
right? No one wants to be parented, especially in the workplace. So I like to lead with those three types of questions because it's open-ended and you're letting that person kind of go through that self-reflection, that evaluation period of a decision that they made, and you're helping them come to see that there may be another path, right? Maybe they would have done the exact same thing and maybe they're good with their outcome, but you're nurturing and you're fostering that growth, right? And as a leader, to me, that's so important because you're growing, you know, uh, uh, your employees are getting faith. They're getting trust in you. You are growing their skills, right? Their respect. And they're going to be making smarter decisions, or more importantly, more informed decisions the next time that same situation presents itself. And to me, that is worth its weight in gold.
So much. We've started out with clarity as our kind of direction we went with this, and it's gone
Yeah,
into leadership. But
it
it's
all is
really
the same,
having,
right?
yeah, having knowledge of your own leadership skills and inabilities, and
Mhm.
being willing to talk to you or I, and we can help them identify those things, so they can be a better leader. You,
Yep.
that's the fun part as a coach that we're kind of outside eyes looking into a business. I don't know exactly what your business does. I can't do that. I don't know, have that exact skill set, but I can help you as a leader identify and get clarity so that you can lead your team
So
properly and have the time.
let me ask you a question. So out of all the issues and things that you see and that clients bring up to you, how many of the issues would you say percentage wise are personal in their nature, in their origination point?
I would say it's over 60%, probably 60 to
Okay.
70%.
Yeah, I don't think you're far off, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's so hard to isolate all your business decisions from everything else that goes into you being you, right? You being Mike Lamb or me being Adam Gabe. Um, we all have those things we carry around with us, and being able to separate those two personas is a real challenge. And so I think dealing with the personal, understanding how the personal relates to a very similar decision type within the business can be super powerful to help predict the types of outcomes that we will make, right? And as
Yep.
I've said earlier, we're trying to, as a business owner, look into that crystal ball and see what's coming next. And more importantly, make a more confident, informed decision. And looking at our own personal traits and how we respond and react in our normal everyday lives can be a great indicator of the type of decision you'll make within the business structure.
Yep. I think it trickles down through every part of the business once you work on yourself and improve yourself.
Yeah.
Um, if a business owner's working or leaders working, 15, 16-hour days, and upset when they come in every morning because their wife's been harping on them,
Hmm.
they bring that to work, you know. Oh, I feel bad because I haven't spent any time with my kids, and so
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
I'm just gonna come to work and cause wreckage along the way.
Yep.
And then I'm just gonna put my head down and work till the hours are late and do it over again. Um,
So,
that's the
whenever
kind of
those types
clarity
of
you need to get, right?
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's paramount. Whenever those types of situations arise with me, I certainly don't shy away from them. I'm not a therapist. You are not a therapist. We're not licensed in that type of work. But I think that there's a certain level of logic and breaking down that we do through our questioning process and really the listening piece of trying to understand and uncover and getting people to answer deeper levels, two, three, four levels down into a single question line that allows them to see some things on a personal layer as well. And so I never shy away from those. And once again, I'm not a therapist, right? I'll scream it, but but if I don't, tackle those types of problems, and by that I at least mean listen and let someone hear the things out and regurgitate some of those key points back so that the client, you can hear exactly what you said. Sometimes it's hard to hear the things that come out of your own mouth. So to have someone be able to, spit some of those things back and be like, what does that mean for you? How does that impact you? How does that impact your decision making? Gosh, Mike, I never ask myself those questions. Well, I never used to, right?
Yeah.
I do now, but it's like, man, that can be so powerful and really help bridge that gap in multiple spaces.
Yeah, that's self-awareness. Yeah, my question to you is, how do we start that conversation? How, as a coach, when do we start it?
I don't know if it's something that we start, to be honest with you. I think it is something that, if approached, I will tackle. I personally try to stick to the business aspects of the fundamentals of the decision making process. So when it comes up, it's more of a invited
Yeah.
conversation than a forced or pushed conversation, right? From
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Listen, if you want to talk about your divorce or your kids' grades, and if that's having an impact, because that's on front of mind and that's having an impact on your ability to get that clarity and make that clear, confident business decision, great, man. Let's go talk about it, right? um, if nothing else, I can listen. uh,
Yeah.
we're pretty good at that, right? So I think at the end of the day, we're there to serve our clients' needs, and we do that in many different form factors. But for me, those conversations I'm invited into, you're inviting me into a personal space, and I just try to be respectful, be sympathetic, empathetic, and you don't judge. You never judge, but you just try to understand their mindset. And when you do understand where they're coming from, try to bring it back to either a business decision, a business use case or scenario, or understand how that makes them change their viewpoint in their day-to-day work lives.
Yeah, I agree completely. We make it a safe space, of space that they can share. And
Oh yeah.
for me, I think about it early in our process. Before we even sign a client, we start asking questions about the business, but we're also tying that to them personally. If we increase your revenue together while I'm coaching you, what is that going to do
Oh
for
yeah.
your time at home? Or what is that going to do for your stress level that you're carrying? We start opening that communication and making them make that connection early on when we start talking to clients, but then we allow for them to start coming to us and giving us the information that we can work with them on to get them there. But there always is a personal tie, I believe,
Ah,
to everything we do.
yeah, that's it, right? It's the emotional connection, right?
Yeah.
If you can take their wants and needs and tie it to an emotion, it makes it real for them. It's not just numbers driven. It's not just process driven. It's not just efficiency driven, right? There's a rhyme and reason and a purpose as to why they want the things that they want. And that
Yeah.
emotional connection is what helps tie us to their want and need, and more importantly, gives us that real clear cut focus of what they want to work on and why, right? So we can always circle back to, well, this is why you want to do this. It's to have more time with X, Y, and Z, or to have a better life with so and so. Super powerful, right? Really
Yep.
is.
Amazing. I think that's probably a good place to wrap up this discussion. It's been a really
Wrap it
fun
up.
one.
I like it.
Any
Listen,
cool?
Mike, every conversation we have is fun. And you know what I love is the passion that flows through as we sit here and banter back and forth and just where the conversation goes. It's so organic and it's from a good place. And so I really appreciate each and every chance that I have to sit down and chat with you. I certainly hope all of our listeners do too. And you're always capable of pulling out some useful nugget. And so nice work, buddy.
Yeah, appreciate you as well. It's always a pleasure and it's fun. It doesn't feel forced. And I lean forward in my chair sometimes because I am passionate about this and my hands talk a lot. And that's just my
I'm picking up on
personality.
your body language, right? The universal
So,
language, right?
yeah.
Nice.
So appreciate you. Appreciate everyone that listens. You can catch us on all the streaming platforms from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and YouTube, and on our social media platforms as well. So thanks for tuning in, everybody.